You're walking through a forest. Birds explode out of the branches above you. A deer freezes, stares at you with eyes the size of dinner plates, then bolts like it just remembered somewhere else it urgently needs to be. A squirrel does that thing where it runs 3 steps, stops, runs 3 steps, stops, quietly having a nervous breakdown because you exist and you're just standing there. Hiking boots, granola bar. Completely harmless, or so you thought. So what is actually going on here? Why does a creature with claws, horns, venom, or raw speed take one look at a slow, soft, mostly hairless ape and decide to run for its life? To understand that, you have to go back further than guns, further than farming, further than fire. You have to go back to a moment when entire species of giant animals disappeared from the planet, and the timing lines up with one thing. Around 50,000 years ago, Australia was home to a wombat the size of a car and a lizard that could have swallowed a dog whole. Within a few thousand years of humans arriving, they were gone. The same pattern repeats almost everywhere humans show up for the first time. Woolly mammoths vanish from the Americas not long after people cross the land bridge from Asia. Giant sloths and saber-toothed cats follow, wiped from the map on a timeline that tracks disturbingly well with human footprints. Scientists call it the megafauna extinction, and while climate gets some of the blame, the pattern is too consistent on too many continents to be coincidence. Long before recorded history, the animal kingdom was already learning a lesson it would never forget. That lesson lives on today in something ecologists call the landscape of fear. It's not just about a predator being nearby, it's about an animal reshaping its entire existence around the possibility that a predator might be nearby. Where it sleeps, when it drinks, which paths it takes to water. All of it gets calibrated generation after generation around staying alive. For most of human history, we were part of that calculation. Early humans weren't the fastest animals on the savannah. We couldn't outrun a gazelle, but we had something worse than speed. We had patience. Paleolithic hunters would simply follow an animal for hours, through the heat of the day, until its body gave out from exhaustion. A strange, upright creature jogging toward you at an unremarkable pace meant a threat that never got tired and never gave up. Animals that ignored a human silhouette in the distance didn't survive to raise offspring. Animals that fled did. Repeat that across thousands of generations and you don't get a learned habit. You get an instruction manual, quietly rewritten into the DNA. Researchers now call this the super predator effect, and the numbers behind it are stranger than you might expect. In 2016, a team at the University of Western Ontario ran an experiment that turned this idea into hard data. They played recordings to wild predators, mountain lions, bobcats, badgers, and it wasn't the sound of a rival predator. It was the sound of humans talking. Casual conversation, the kind you'd overhear at a bus stop. The reaction was immediate. Mountain lions fled at more than twice the rate they fled from other large predators. Even animals with no natural enemies still ran. The researchers gave humans a new title in the food chain, the super predator. Not because we're the strongest or fastest, but because across species and continents we are feared more than anything else. Here's the part that makes it stranger. A wolf hunts at dawn and dusk. A crocodile waits near water. These are patterns, and prey animals have spent millions of years learning to read them. Humans don't have a pattern. We hunt at every hour, alone or in groups, with fire, traps, spears, or a fishing line. We threaten animals we eat and animals we have no interest in at all. From the perspective of a brain built to sort threats into tidy categories, big cat, bird of prey, canine, we simply don't fit anywhere. We smell wrong, we move oddly, and then, without warning, we spend 20 minutes gently feeding pigeons in a park. An unsolvable variable doesn't get cautiously monitored. It gets avoided entirely at all times just to be safe. Which raises an obvious problem. Why does a pigeon in a city square look at you like you're the one overreacting? The answer is habituation. When an animal is exposed to something repeatedly and nothing bad happens, the brain stops wasting energy being afraid of it. City pigeons have lived alongside humans, fed rather than hunted, for so many generations that the fear response has simply switched off. Crows take it further. They recognize individual human faces, hold grudges against people who've wronged them, and scold that specific person for years, even teaching the warning to their young. While some animals are forgetting to fear us, others are quietly compiling a file. There's also the part nobody wants to hear. We might just smell wrong. Human scent, soap, deodorant, food residue is a chemical event with no natural equivalent in the wild. Researchers testing scent strips near camera traps found that human sweat reduced animal activity by roughly the same amount as mountain lion urine. Simply existing puts you in the same threat category as an apex predator. So this fear isn't just a personality quirk of individual animals. It rearranges entire ecosystems, and the clearest proof of that comes from Yellowstone. When wolves were reintroduced to the park in 1995, biologists expected fewer deer. What they didn't expect was how much deer behavior would change. Deer stopped lingering in open valleys and avoided riverbanks, the exact places wolves were most likely to ambush them. Because the deer weren't overgrazing those areas anymore, vegetation came back, riverbanks stabilized, and fish and bird species returned. None of this happened because wolves were eating more deer. It happened because deer were afraid, and that fear alone reshaped a river valley. More recent research tracks what fear costs a body directly. Elk under high predation risk show elevated stress hormones and spend measurably less time feeding, even in years wolves barely touch them. The fear itself is the expense, adding up to fewer calories and lower survival without a single tooth making contact. Now apply that to us. A 2018 study in Science tracked mammal activity on 6 continents and found animals that used to be active by day were becoming nocturnal, not from habitat loss, but simply because humans were around during daylight. We're apparently significant enough as a species to shift when wildlife across the planet chooses to be awake. So if animals are this cautious around us, why do attacks happen at all? Almost never out of aggression. Nearly every dangerous encounter falls into one of 3 situations. The animal is cornered, a mother is defending offspring, or habitat loss has forced it into closer contact with people than it would choose. Bears are a good example. Given any real option, a bear leaves. But as development eats into bear habitat, that option shrinks. And a stressed, trapped animal surprised at close range reacts the way most animals, humans included, do when cornered. And that brings us to the control group, the places where the lesson was never taught. When Darwin landed on the Galapagos in the 1830s, he wrote about birds that wouldn't fly away, and marine iguanas he could push into the water, only to watch them calmly swim back and sit beside him again. In marine reserves where fishing has been banned for decades, fish have been documented swimming toward divers, while fish just outside the boundary flee on sight. Fear of humans isn't a factory setting. It's installed through experience. And where the experience never happened, it simply isn't there. Here's the uncomfortable part. That fear isn't a glitch. It's an accurate read of the situation. Humans have driven hundreds of species extinct, destroyed more than half the planet's natural habitat, and altered the global climate. Statistically, the animals that run from us are making the correct call. But there's a twist buried inside that fear. Because animals flee and hide so effectively, we often don't see the true scale of our own impact. Nature looks quiet, so we assume it's fine. The absence of animals reads as peace instead of what it actually is, a retreat. And that same fear makes wildlife harder to study, harder to protect, harder to help. But there's a genuinely hopeful thread here, from an unlikely place. A decades-long Soviet fox breeding experiment. Starting in the 1950s, researchers selectively bred silver foxes for one trait: calmness around humans. Within just 6 generations, the foxes weren't just tolerant of people, they were seeking out affection, wagging their tails like puppies. Fear of humans could be dialed down astonishingly fast once the right pressure was removed. We're seeing something similar in the wild today. Mountain gorilla tourism programs in Rwanda and Uganda have documented gorilla groups going from fleeing at the sight of rangers to calmly tolerating human observers, after just a few years of careful, consistent, non-threatening contact. The gorillas didn't forget to be afraid. They were given new information over and over until it overwrote the old model. In rewilded areas where hunting pressure has lifted, animals gradually return to daytime grazing and open habitats. The landscape of fear can be dismantled. It just has to be replaced with something equally consistent. None of this means the squirrel losing its mind on your lawn is being dramatic. It's running a survival program refined over tens of thousands of years, one that has no way of knowing you're just trying to eat a granola bar in peace. We are the most adaptable, unpredictable, and ecologically dominant predator this planet has ever produced. But the same intelligence that made us this frightening is what makes a fox calm down in 6 generations, or a gorilla learn to sit near a stranger without flinching. That version of the world already exists, in patches, in reserves, on islands where the experiment has quietly been running for decades. The landscape of fear isn't permanent. It's a reflection of behavior, and behavior on both sides can change.